You guys ready?
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back. Rabotai, we are this week in the final Parsha of Sefer Bereshit, Parshat Vayechi. Rabotai, I want to start by taking a moment, by looking at the Sichos Musar of Chaim Shmulevitz. Chaim Shmulevitz, in his Hakdama of his shmuzes during the Yom Kippur War, he brings the Gemara in Bava Batra. The Gemara speaks of the Harugei Lod, the ones who died in the city of Lod. What happened there? There was a Jewish community in Lod, and they were accused of killing the king's child. And the king was determined to take revenge. Gemara tells us this. The entire community was in grave danger, and the king said, if I don't know who it is, I'm going to kill everybody. And all of a sudden, two individuals came forward, completely innocent. They came over and they confessed that they killed the king's son. The king took out his fury on these two, and the whole city of Jews was saved. Says the Gemara, no creature can approach their lofty spot in Olam Haba. Nobody can reach their level. They saved so many Jews. They have an extraordinary zechut, and they have an extraordinary place in Olam Haba. Says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, V'chein ani omer al ela shemosrim nafsham ba'avur hatzalaton. He says, I say the same thing about our soldiers who are fighting in the Yom Kippur War, says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz. He tells us Talmidim, this is the way you're supposed to think. This is the way he tells the Mir Talmidim. He says, this is what you're supposed to think about the soldiers who are on the front line, who are fighting for Klal Yisrael. They're like these two great people who saved the entire Jewish community of Lod. Says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz further. He says, don't look at these soldiers with tanks and say, look how brave and strong they are. He says, don't be deceived by the fact that they're wearing army gear. He says the truth is, they are soft, kind, young Jewish men who are putting on a brave face. They are pressed into situations that they don't want to be in, into situations that we don't want our children to be in. They are in tremendous danger. Chaim Shmulevitz in the Sichos Musar tells us what we can do. What is our battle plan for this war that's going on? He's talking in Yom Kippur War, but it applies to this war as well. And he says one of the messages, one of the things we have to think about is Chushim ben Dan. Who's Chushim ben Dan? He's the son of Dan, and he's deaf. What does he say you have to learn from him? Famous story, right? What happens? In this week's Parsha, Yaakov Avinu dies, right? Lo met, Yaakov didn't die. Fine. They were going to bury Yaakov. And they bring him up to Mat Machpelah, and comes Esav, and Esav says, no, this is my spot. You can't bury Yaakov here. And they start arguing, discussion.
Such a huge place.
Because no, there's a spot. There's special spots. Abraham, Sarah, Yitzchak, Rivka, Leah was there, and the spot next to her is supposed to be Yaakov, and he says, that's my spot. And he says, no, but you sold it. He says, prove it. So Yehuda tells Naphtali, go back to Mitzrayim and bring the shtar, bring the contract. Naphtali starts running. Naphtali is very fast. Naphtali starts running. Hushim ben Dan is there, and he's deaf. He doesn't hear this whole thing. So he sees that the funeral procession has stopped. So he asks, what happened? So they tell him in sign language, they tell him that Esav is not letting. So what does Hushim ben Dan do? What does the Midrash tell us? He runs over and smashes Esav's head, and Esav's head rolls off, and he kills him. And the funeral continues. They go on their bed of Yaakov. So says Rav Chaim, what happened to everyone else? Why didn't anyone else think of this solution? Kill Esav and move on. So says Rav Chaim Shulevitz, you know why? He says, question, Yehuda is stronger than Hushim. They're all stronger. Why did no one else do it? Says Rav Chaim. You know why? Because everyone else grew accustomed to the situation. You know, sometimes something could be so bad, but when you get used to it, it doesn't feel so bad anymore. Because you got used to it. But Hushim was deaf. He didn't get used to it. He didn't know what was happening. He sees right now this is happening, and he goes and he takes care of it.
He knew what's right and wrong.
Right? He didn't get used to the wrong. Right? People get used to the wrong. People get used to being that anti-Semitism is okay. People get used to things. Hushim bin Dan didn't have a chance to get used to anything because he didn't hear the whole conversation. He just saw it was wrong and took care of it. Says Rav Chaim. Says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz. We have all become gradually accustomed to many things. We see pictures of Jewish boys davening next to the tanks. And we think, wow, what an image. That's a tragedy. If you're davening in a shul. In front of a tank? That's not where Jewish boys belong. But we have no choice. How unfortunate it is that Jewish boys have to have guns over their shoulders. That Ben Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov sits in a tank. But we get used to the situation. But it's not just about the soldiers being in danger. Rabotai, we don't understand and we don't appreciate what it means to have Eretz Yisrael. What it means to have that land in Jewish hands. Gidolim of 100 years ago. If you would tell them now, 100 years ago, that there would be 8 million Jews living in Israel, they wouldn't believe you. Because it was an impossible thought. And with Hashem's Rahmanut, with Hashem's mercy, we were able to have so many Jews living there. But do we appreciate it? Or have we become used to it? That it's there. You remember our parents, our grandparents, they came to Eretz Yisrael, they kissed the floors. They knew where they were. Today we get there, we're excited, we're going to Eilat, we're going to go on a cruise, we're going to go on the different things there, and we forget where we are and what we're doing. Furthermore, says Rav Chaim, that Eretz Yisrael, just the fact that there are Jews there, even the non-religious Jews in Eretz Yisrael, it's a very big zechut. In America, you have Jews who are non-religious, they assimilate and they disappear. You don't hear them. They're gone. But in Israel, at least they know Aleph Bet. At least they know Shema Yisrael, they know something. That means, he says over here, Rav Reisman says, when Mashiach comes, one of his jobs will be to set up yeshivot to teach millions of Jews a connection. But they'll be okay because they already know Aleph Bet, so they're able to read the Siddur, they're able to read the Chumash. He says, Rav Reisman says over here, he doesn't understand when people have a choice to travel. And they say, we're going to Paris, or we're going to go to Rome. He says, you have a choice to travel? And you have an option to go to Eretz Yisrael, and you want to go to Paris? And you want to go to Rome? It means you don't appreciate Eretz Yisrael. You don't understand what we have. We take Eretz Yisrael for granted. We have to develop the attitude of Hushim ben Dan. We have to wake up and say, Eretz Yisrael is in our hands, and we should be so excited about that. We have to run for it. And he says here, B'Shem the Kuzari says that when people daven for Eretz Yisrael, they do without any feeling, like the chirping of a bird. We just say the words with no feeling. We don't understand what it means to daven for Bonei Yerushalayim. Build up Jerusalem. So says Rav Reisman, B'Shem Rav Chaim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu places Eretz Yisrael in danger because He wants us to grow an appreciation for it. That at some point we have to say, wow, look at what we have. Look what's in danger. And we have to come to reappreciate it. Let's not get used to it. We have to be appreciated. Says Rav Pam, Chassidic Bracha would say, we're going to soon learn in a few weeks about the Makkah of Tzefardea, frogs. What happened with the frogs? The one big frog came out, and every time you hit it, more and more frogs came out. Right? That's the way the story goes. So, says Rav Pam, right, he says the same thing is with the terrorist. You kill one terrorist, two come in his place. Look right now when you see. You get rid of one, 10 other more anti-Semites come out. Yeah, you get rid of one terrorist, 10 other come out. So says Rav Pam, how did we finally get rid of the Tzefardea? How did we get rid of all the frogs? How do you get rid of them?
Fire. You threw them in the fire. Jump.
No, they jumped in the fire. How did they leave Messiah? How did the Mitzrayim end the plague of Tzefardea? Very simple. They told Moshe Rabbeinu to daven for them. Says Rav Pam, it's the same thing with the terrorists. Our soldiers, yes, they have to do a job and go and fight them. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be the soldiers. Because every time you kill one terrorist, there'll come more. You remember in the early 2000s, there were terrorist suicide bombers. Right? They were blowing up buses in Eretz Yisrael left and right. Pizza shops and whatnot. How did that end, all the suicide bombing? It all ended with tefillah, with prayer. We were praying away. I remember every summer we were praying, we were davening the whole time. Because it's only tefillah. You can come up with all sorts of plans. You can come up with all sorts of political situations and everything. But the only way it's going to work is with tefillah. I'll end up with this idea on this topic. That when Yosef reveals himself to his brothers, Yosef cries on Binyamin's neck, and Binyamin cries on Yosef's neck. Why are they crying? So we know the famous explanation. Binyamin saw that the Mishkan that will be built in Shiloh on Yosef's property will be destroyed. And Yosef saw the Beit HaMikdash with Binyamin's property was going to be destroyed. So they cried. So the question is, why did they each cry for each other's loss? Why did Yosef cry for Binyamin? And why did Binyamin cry for Yosef? Let Yosef cry for Yosef and let Binyamin cry for Binyamin. So Rav Reisman here says, you know why? The answer is that when you're having a problem, you don't cry. You take care of the problem. But the guy who's not having the problem, he cries for you. Right? When it's your problem, you got to take care of it. But Yamin cannot cry for his own property because he needs to do something about it. Yosef isn't doing about it. But they cry for each other. Says Rav Reisman, those in Eretz Yisrael, they have their job. They have their job. They got to go up and be soldiers and they have to fight. But for those of us in America, where we don't really feel it, life continues, life goes on, the restaurants are open, they're having New Year's parties. In the middle of a war, they're having New Year's parties, New Year Eve parties. B'shum definition, no one person not go to a New Year's party ever. 2020, you want a New Year's party? Rosh Hashanah night? You're invited to my house for a New Year's party. Alright? But 2024, 23, there's nothing, it's not no party away. And people going. He says in America, okay, we're not the soldiers, but our job is to cry for our brothers. What do you mean cry? It means to daven. It means to have tefillah. It means to pray Tehillim. We just say Tehillim. You know, they once asked Rav Moshe, someone had a surgery getting done. So they asked Rav Moshe Feinstein, the boys in the yeshiva, can they take time off learning to say Tehillim? And Rav Moshe said, of course, they have to say Tehillim. So they asked him, how long can they take off from learning to say Tehillim? And his answer was, as long as they're saying Tehillim with kavanah. Meaning, saying Tehillim without kavanah is one thing. But saying Tehillim with kavanah, that's so great. According to Rav Moshe, you can put away learning Torah in order to say Tehillim with kavanah. So when we cry, are we davening? Are we saying Tehillim? Today, now we're saying Tehillim, so people are rushing through it. You have 3 parakim to say quickly, let's say it. All right? And we've lost it. We've become Chushim bin Dan. We got used to the war. The war is going on. There are hostages. It's 83 days, 84 days. And we're just continuing our life. No, says Rav Chaim. We have to feel it. And we have to know. When we say in Shemona Esrei, Re'ena be'onenu, right? That bracha is about our problems in Galut, our problems in exile. In there, we're supposed to add a tefillah in our own words. Hashem, please, look what's going on. Save our brothers who are in Gaza. Save our brothers who are fighting for Eretz Yisrael. That's the place where to daven for it. We have to add words. We can't forget about it. In 1967, an American bacha was learning in the shir of Rav Nachum in the Mir Yeshiva. And as the war was breaking out, he asked Rav Nachum whether he should go home to America or stay here. And Rav Nachum told him, if you go back to the States, you will lose the opportunity to steig. You will lose the opportunity to learn. But his parents, very American, forced him to come back. And he went back to the States. And of course, he was a yeshiva here. And after the war ended, he came back to the Mir Yeshiva. And he told his Rabbi, I know you were worried about my learning, but you should know, the whole time I was keeping up with the yeshiva, everything you were learning, I was learning, we got it all. And Rav Nachum replied, he said, no. When I said you wouldn't be steiging, wouldn't be learning well, I wasn't talking about Gemara. Gemara you also can learn in America. But I meant steiging from the ear raid sirens. Steiging from the fear of death. Using that to bring you closer to the Rabbanu Shalom. This is the precious opportunity that you missed, says Rav Nachum. To be able to have that pachad, to be able to have that fear, to be able to have that hergish, that feeling of Klal Yisrael being in danger. And the truth is, perhaps that's why Hashem made it that the anti-Semites are out in big forces, to make us feel uncomfortable. We think we're comfortable, we think we have it here, it's peacetime, it's okay. No, we're supposed to feel uncomfortable. We're supposed to not do something. Stay away from treats. They're not needed. Okay, everyone needs a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but there are certain things that we have to forego. We know when World War I was going on and Jews were in the barracks, they were fighting. Chafetz Chaim wouldn't sleep in a bed. The whole time that the war was going on, he was sleeping on the floor. How can I sleep in the bed when Jews are fighting? My brothers are fighting in the war. I'm not telling anyone not to sleep in a bed, but to at least have a feeling. It's 83, 84 days into the war, and we become used to it. And this is something we have to learn from Chushim bin Dan, not to get used to it. To have that hergish, to have that feeling, and let it remain alive. Let's move on to a second lesson on this week's Parsha. At the beginning of the Parsha, Yaakov Avinu says to Yosef HaTzadik, make sure to bury me in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, how important it is to live in Eretz Yisrael and to die in Eretz Yisrael, and to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. And Yosef says, Anochi eseh kidvarecha. I'm going to do like you said. What is Yosef HaTzadik saying? He could just say, Eheseh kidvarecha. I'll do like you said. Why is he saying, Anochi, I will do what you said? Eheseh kidvarecha means the same thing. You don't need to say, Anochi eheseh kidvarecha. Why is he saying Anochi?
I'll do the same thing like you do.
So let's listen to a Nupshat. Nupshat. There was a father that every Rosh Hashanah used to go to shul with his two older boys. And he had one year, he had his youngest boy, his third boy, 7 years old. And the boy said he wants to come to shul. And the father was debating, take him, not take him. He said, I'm going to sit nice. He says, but the father says, you don't know how to daven. So one of his older brothers says, I'll daven every word out loud. And this way my younger brother would learn to daven too. So the father agreed. They came. Rosh Hashanah passed. And after the 2 days of Hashanah, another man who was sitting at the table next to these boys came over to the father and said, I have to tell you something. I haven't been in shul in 20 years. Finally this year I came back to shul for Rosh Hashanah. And, truth be told, I don't know how to daven. And I was scared, how am I going to daven? And suddenly I sat down on your table, and your boy was reading every word out loud, and I was able to copy him, follow him, and see his page. And Baruch Hashem, I was able to daven. And I plan on coming back on Yom Kippur as well. Another story. There was a seminary, group of seminary girls. They came to a certain Beit Midrash in Eretz Yisrael for davening. And one of the moros, one of the head of the teachers, she took one of her children with her to the shul to daven Shabbat morning. And then she's there. Her child starts to run around. So much so, the child takes her siddur that she had, pushes it out of her hand, and it falls over the balcony and down to the men's section. She's looking to see if it hit anyone. Can't see it. She waits for the prayers to end, and then she walks into the men's section after prayers. And she sees a man walking over who looks like a Baal Tshuva. And he comes over and he says, "Are you looking for this?" She says, "Yes." He says, "I want to tell you thank you." He says, "For what?" He says, "I came into shul late, and I don't know tefillot by heart, and I couldn't find the siddur. And all of a sudden I was standing there, and all of a sudden a siddur fell from Shamayim into my hands. And for that I want to say thank you." There's another famous mashal of a king who says to his people in the city, he says, "Whoever can climb 100 flights in 2 minutes is going to get a huge reward." All right, 10 minutes, whatever it was. 100 flights in 10 minutes, huge reward. Everybody tries, everyone gives up. One guy goes, and in 10 minutes, he's up to the 30th floor. And as he gets to the 30th floor, it's like 1 minute away from 10, he sees an elevator. He goes in it and takes it to the 100th. And he makes it, and he gets the huge reward. So the king tells him, "Did you know there was an elevator there?" He says, "No." He says, "So why'd you do it?" He says, "I don't know. If the king said it's possible, then it's possible." What's these three stories? What's the connection? Anochi e'aseh kidvarecha. Yosef HaTzadik. What is he saying? What's the whole idea here? You want to get something done? You have to really be in it. Anochi, Yosef says, I'm going to do it. E'aseh kidvarecha. Like you said, once you're in it and you're really committed to doing it, then Hashem helps you. Then Hashem helps you. But if I'm thinking, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it like this, I'm going to do it like that, perhaps this guy, that guy, you're not in it. You're not committed. It won't happen. Yosef said to Yaakov Avinu, I promise you it's going to happen. How? Anochi, I'm committed to doing it. I am putting my 100% in it. As we know, the famous saying that says, if you say you can, you can. If you say you can't, you're right. You won't be able to do it. Right? That's the way it is. Anochi, I'm going to do it. I'm committed to doing it. And once you're committed to doing it, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps for the rest. It says, Rav Juk would say this about learning Torah. It says every morning you read this. Et kol divrei tamud toratecha be'ahava. We ask Hashem to let me learn Torah. We don't say just learn Torah. Et kol divrei. Every piece of Torah. All the books you see. How can it be done? Anochi. Once you decide to do it, ubaharta b'chaim, says the Ketav Sofer. Once you choose, it says, right, in Devarim, ubaharta b'chaim, choose life. Your job is to just choose. Once you choose to commit to do it, you can do it. The Pirkei Avot already told us this. The job is not on you to finish. But you cannot say, make calculations and say, I can't do it. You can't not do it. You do your part. I tell you, Rabotai, and Lahavdol, which is 1 minute from Torah, but the truth is this is in every job. And I go to work, sometimes they give me thousands of things to do. I can't do 1,000 things. But I do what I can. I put myself to what I need to get done. And all of a sudden, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes this work. This one happens, this happens, that happens. I didn't even call anybody yet. All of a sudden, things start going. You get committed. You commit to do your part of the job. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of the rest. But you got to be committed to it. So that is the lesson on Anochi E'aseh Kidvarecha. Let's move on to our third and final lesson on this week's Parsha. we have in the Parsha that Yaakov Avinu is talking to Yosef. And he's telling Yosef, you have to bury me in Eretz Yisrael, in holy Eretz Yisrael. And he says to him over there that I didn't do this for your mother. Right? I didn't bury her properly. I buried her on the side of the road. And in the middle of talking about what happened to his mother, he says to Yosef, you have now Menashe and Ephraim, Kiruven v'Shimon Yuli. Right? In the middle of talking about what happened to his mom, he goes and he starts talking about Ephraim and Menashe are like Reuven and Shimon, and you're going to get an extra land, right? He gives all these things to Yosef in the middle of his talk. What was going on here? So Avshalom Shadron, the Maggid, Tzaddik L'Bracha, tells us a very, very important idea. Yaakov Avinu was telling Yosef, your children, as like Reuven and Shimon, you're getting the extra land, like a Bechor, you becoming the Bechor. You know why? Because you're very different than Reuven. What was Reuven's mistake? Reuven's mistake was, when Rachel died, Yaakov didn't put his bed in Leah's tent. And Reuven thought that was a mistake. So what did he do? He went and he took the bed and he put it into his mother's tent. And Yaakov said, what? You're just doing things? You're just deciding to do something and you're doing it? That's a problem. But Yosef HaTzadik, says Shmuel Shadron, never got upset. When Yaakov asked him to bury him in Eretz Yisrael proper, Yosef didn't say, you didn't bury my mother nicely. Why should I do it for you? Yosef didn't say those words. Yosef kept quiet. Says Rav Shalom Shadron, you know what it takes to be a leader? To be a leader, it takes people, you have to have the ability to look beyond of what's going on right here. To say maybe the other person has a reason why they're doing it. Not to mix your heart with your mind, but to think each one, to keep your feelings and your intellect intact at the same time. As a leader, as a boss, as anyone who's in a position of power, people will come and feed you all sorts of information and tell you things. If you listen to what someone is telling you, without investigating, without thinking about the situation, and just follow what someone else is telling you, you're going to be going down the wrong path all the time. Because people will always say things that make them look good. You want me to give you proof? Look at your own children. Right? When they get into a fight in the house, and each one tells you their side of the story, they're always right. He's right, she's right. Who's wrong? Everybody has a good story. Right? But a person in power, person who's in leadership, has to be able to stop, not just listen, but to think the whole thing through. Investigate. Look. Get back. Reuven, his problem, says Yaakov Avinu, was what? He felt feelings, and he let his feelings over control him. And he went and he did something about it, and he moved the bed. Yosef didn't do that. Yosef said, Yaakov, you're asking me, tell me what happened. So Yaakov says, Hashem told me to bury her at the side of the road because when they're going to be exiled later on in the future, they're going to pray to her and she's going to go to Shemayim and help them. So there was a reason there. Yosef investigated. He found out. Yaakov told him. You cannot act on feelings. Right? That's what Goyim do a big mistake to. All they talk about is feelings. Feelings and that's it. Right? I think Ben Shapiro, Havdil, says very nicely, it's, facts don't care about your feelings, right? There's feelings and there's facts. You can feel something, but then there's a fact. You got to take care of what's going on. Sometimes I don't like something. I don't like the way I feel about it. But this is the rules and this is the way it applies. And that's what has to get done. There was a famous story, very famous story, that happened in the city of Krakow. In the 17th century, there's a Jewish population in the city of Krakow. Many Talmidei Chachomim. But the overall most of the Jews there were very poor. There was a man, his name was Yisrael, and Yisrael was a very rich man. So rich, he could have helped everybody. But when anyone came to him for tzedakah, he said no. No! He refused them. Politely, I'm sorry, I can't give you. So much so that people gave up coming to ask him for money. So much so that they called him, they gave him a nickname. Yisrael Goy. That was his name. Yisrael Goy. No, time doesn't stop for anyone. And eventually this Yisrael Goy was on his deathbed. The Chevra Kedusha, they came to him and they said, listen, we're going to prepare for you a burial spot. We're going to prepare for you a burial spot. So he says, okay, I'm willing to pay a small amount of money, he says. They say, you're dying, you're not going to take your money with you, just help us. You know, the money we get here, we're going to give to other people. He says, listen, my cheshbon is with Hashem. I'm paying the standard fare. I want a simple plot. You can give me on the side of the cemetery. I don't need anything special. He says, but I'll pay for one more thing. I want a matzeva. I want a tombstone that reads Yisrael Goy. He dies. And barely they had a minyan for his levaya, for his kfurah. They had to beg people to come. There was no hesped, nothing. And they just buried him on the side, and that was it. That Thursday night after he died, the Tosfot Yom Tov, Harav Yom Tov Lipa Heller, he's sitting in his study learning, and all of a sudden he hears a knock on the door. A poor man is asking for money for Shabbat. No? Rav Yom Tov goes to his box, he has the money, he gives a few dollars. He goes back to learning. Literally 2 minutes later, another knock. Another poor person in the community asking for money. He gives it. 2 minutes later, another knock. It goes like this throughout the night, again and again, knocking on the door. At some point, Rav Yom Tov Lipa Heller says, I don't understand. Up until today, where are all these guys? The next guy comes knocking. He says, okay, tell me, what did you do until now? How come it's the first Thursday night I see you? He says, well, I'll tell you, Rabbi, the truth is that every Thursday we would go shopping at the grocery store. We would put it on credit. And next week, it was taken care of. And we did this for years. But right now, we went to the grocer today, and the grocer tells us we can't do it anymore. He's not giving us. So Rav Yom Tov calls the grocers down to his house and says, what's going on? How did you do this all these years? I say, Rabbi, he says, I command you, you're not leaving my house until you tell me what was going on all these years. How are we going to support all these people? And the grocer says, listen, we promised him we won't tell you, but you're forcing us to tell her. That guy who died, Yisrael Goy, he would walk into our store every Friday, every Sunday after Shabbat, and he would say, how many poor people, what did they buy, how much it cost, and he would pay me the total every week. And he would do it week from week for all the poor people of the community. But he made us promise not to tell anyone. You can imagine when the news got out into the city, how everyone felt. They hated this guy. They felt terrible about him. No one came to his husband. Everyone put him down. And now they saw how he was. The whole community was standing on him. The Tosfot Yom Tov at his Shloshim made a huge hospital. Everyone came. And they put up the tombstone. But they changed one thing. It still said Yisrael Goy, but after the word Goy, they put the word Kadosh. Yisrael Goy Kadosh. And I believe the story also goes that Tosfot Yom Tov asked to be buried next to him. What a tzaddik that he was. So the point of the story is, don't let your feelings get in the way. Obviously, the number one feeling would be to hate this guy. What a kamtzan, what a miser, what a not good Jew. Put words down him. Chas v'shalom. We can't do that. it requires investigation. It requires knowing, like we say, the Gemara tells every single Jew is maleh b'mitzvot kirimon, like a pomegranate full of mitzvot. That's the way we have to look at them. So with these 3 lessons to quickly review, lesson number 1 from Chushim bin Dan, not to get used to the situation, not to say that we're living in war and it's okay and we already got used to the situation, but to rather have the hergush every single day, the feeling of our brothers whose lives are on the line, who are dying again and again. And Rav Mutzafi said the reason why they're dying is our fault, is that we're not davening enough, we're not feeling it enough. Rav Chaim Shulevitz talks about it in Sichos Musar, how important it is for us to have that feeling, to realize, to appreciate what we have, appreciate Eretz Yisrael that we have. And our second lesson, the Anochi, you have to be committed. You have to really be in it. You have to be in it to win it. If you're not in it, nothing will happen. And our third and final lesson on this week's Parsha is the lesson that our feelings should not take over us. I will say it again and again in the Hakdomo to Midrash Rabbah of Kohelet. They asked the question to Shlomo Melech and David Melech. They asked them, what is more important? The intellect or the heart? The feeling or the mind? And David Melech, what would you think David Melech's answer should be? Who is David Melech? David Melech wrote Psalms, wrote Tehillim. He's a feeling man. You would think he would say heart. Shlomo Melech, what's Shlomo Melech? Shlomo Melech is intellect, wisdom. You would think he would say wisdom is most important. They answer the opposite. David Melech said the intellect is the most important, and Shlomo Melech said the heart is most important. Why? Why? Because a true, well-rounded individual, a true chacham, a true leader, is someone who can use both. You must use both. You cannot let your intellect rule you, because then you become cold and you become mean, because it's your intellect. It's proper, it's logical, right? If you have your feelings, it's going to take over and destroy you. You have to have a mixture. And that was the godless of David Melech. That's the godless of Shlomo Melech, that they knew how to use that mixture. You have to know how to have that feeling and when to use wisdom, when to use intellect, when to use feeling. And that's what it means to be a leader. And with this, I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. Toda Rabah.